You know, the season of Advent, as we've been discovering and learning, is a season of preparing our souls, being open to the new things that God is doing. Because God was doing a new thing when God sent Jesus into the world and said, with this, you are going to experience me in a new way. I am going to come by sending my Son, Jesus Christ, in the flesh, God Emmanuel. And this was a new development for them. And so God was bringing something new and bringing renewal to the people of Israel by sending Jesus Christ. So it's important for us to prepare for Jesus' return by giving our joyful best. So turn to your neighbor and say, let's give Christ our joyful best this Christmas. That's right. You know, sometimes you gotta move. You know, the spirit moves when the body moves. I know we're the frozen chosen. We like to do this. If you don't move, hey, do this a little bit for me. Would you just show me that? Look at that. Thank you. Okay, sometimes you gotta get the shoulders going and the body moving because, and then that's gonna touch our spirits. But anyways, today's lectionary passage is known as the Magnificat. This is Mary's response to two events. One is the Annunciation, when the angel comes and visits Mary and says, Mary, I have chosen you. God has chosen you to carry the Messiah, the Savior. So fear not. Fear not. Once again, I'm going to say again, fear not this change that is happening in your body. I know you're a virgin. You're not expected to be pregnant. But this miracle is a gift from God. And so this is the beginning of this moment where she has heard this new news. And then she goes and, as we heard last week, visits Elizabeth, her cousin, and she is pregnant with John the Baptist. And when she meets and hears of Mary's visit, the baby in John the Baptist, in Elizabeth's womb, jumps and leaps for joy. And then they have this conversation. You know, this conversation could have been something down. That moment could have been depressing, like, honey, have you been having relations with Joseph? You're not even married yet. It could have been a moment. You guys know those moments where it's a pregnant moment? But Elizabeth didn't do that, did she? She took that moment and said, I'm going to bring joy to this moment. I'm going to bring, because she knew that this was a moment to be affirming and say, Mary, the baby in my womb leaped for joy. Pregnant moment that could have been bad turns into a positive moment. But anyways, and then Mary has been marveling. We explored the idea that Mary pondered, really thought about what this meant, and then she treasured it in her heart. And as she pondered and treasured, she began nesting. She began preparing to be the mother of the Savior, the Messiah, this holy child that was in her. This is an amazing time of preparation for her that began. She was going to be chosen to help bring renewal to the various generations that would come after. Jesus would then bring a lot of renewal and change into the world. And so this was an important position that she had. She needed to focus on what God was calling her to do. You know, there's this passage in this story this week that just really has really been on my case, because I wanted to take this sermon somewhere else, but I know that I kind of just feel compelled to share this. How many of you have heard of the Me Too movement, the hashtag Me Too movement? You can't see the news without hearing about this. In today's passage, there's this passage where it says, you know, Mary, you've been chosen, you who are lowly, you who are basically a nobody teenager from this nobody podunk town called Nazareth. You've been chosen to break the silence. You've been chosen to carry the Messiah who will bring down the mighty and bring a new order, a new kingdom into the world. A new kingdom based on love, hope, joy, and peace, and forgiveness, and kindness, where all are loved by God and all will know that they are loved by God, that everybody has this opportunity to be redeemed by the Lord, that there's no high and low people, but in God's kingdom, we are all God's children together. She is given this important task, but in this Me Too movement that really caught me is that, once again, that those in high places, those who are powerful, those covert, manipulating, aggressive men in those C-suites were exposed finally. Now, did this behavior suddenly happen? No, it's been going on for years. But you can also consider the long suffering of the women who had been attacked and been the victims of this type of aggression, covert operations by these men in power. But yet, when you read the Time magazine article on Women of the Year, because these Women of the Year were these whistleblowers became Women of the Year, you begin to realize that, that there's been a lot of suffering. There was a lot of pain. There must have been a lot of prayer amongst those who were Christians and saying, God, how can this happen? Why do you allow these types of situations to go on for so long? But yet there are those moments, folks, where in this past year was a watershed year. The civil rights movement, the days of Rosa Parks on the bus, demonstrating for civil rights, there were key moments that captured the imagination of the people. But it took a while. It took several years for that movement to really kind of blossom. This began in the early part of this year, and in the past 2 years, you don't go a day without finding a new revelation of a powerful, covert operating man, oppressing women who finally gets exposed. The last vestige, the C-suite, the corporate suite, has now been opened and said, look, you guys who are doing this behavior, no more. This is a word of joy. That this type of thing happens. Periodically, people say, where is God? Is God working in the world for reform to bring about change? Yes, God does. We saw that with the Israelites, who were in slavery and bondage for years, but yet at that right moment, at the right time, after enough prayers were lifted to heaven, God sends a Moses, and God creates situations that can allow for change to happen. Those moments of change can often happen quickly, but character change, the other part of change, growing in Christ and growing in ways that are going to make some of these changes that have been that are needed in society, that will take time. But at least we can celebrate in this moment for this rapid change that has taken place in our society. So there's hope and joy in the ways that God is working. God often works through those who are, so my first point this week is that God often works through those who are in low places, those who are humble. And so I'm going to try this thing this week. And let's see. Okay. All this. Did I pass? Oh, no, I'm going the wrong direction. I'm sorry. Okay, so we were at the right place. User error. User error. Mercy. Mercy. Okay, so I just want to just point out that God often chooses people in the most ordinary, lowly of suburbs. Granted, Diamond Bar is considered the lowliest of suburbs, but there you go. Look up there. You see Sepphoris. Sepphoris is a very wealthy villa town. This is where the wealthy lived there. They had these huge homes, courtyards. The powerful of the who were living in the region of Galilee, and many of them lived in that area. They had vacation homes there. And now, you hear about this little city of Nazareth, a little village. Actually, back then, it was so innocuous. Have you ever been in one of those towns where you drive through the corner of that town and you wondered, is there even a town here? Yeah. Well, that was Nazareth. So according to historical documents and records, people would say, Nazareth where? Nazareth who? Does anything good come out of Nazareth? Because there you had the working class people who worked, as laborers, like Joseph did as a carpenter, as a day laborer here in Sepphoris. And then also, what that area was also known for were the expendables. There were also another group of people that lived there that they were even below peasants. These people, they found actually lived underground. They would dig holes in the ground to live in, or dig holes in the hillside to live in, because they were just that poor and just that desperate. They couldn't own land, so what they did was just wherever they could find, they were living, and they were basically the homeless of that day. And so Nazareth was really a backwater area, suburb of Sepphoris. But it was in that place that God chose a unwed pregnant teen girl. Someone who, if you really thought about it, if Joseph said, we're betrothed, but I'm not going to marry you. I'm just going to quietly divorce you. This ain't my child. This ain't my child. I'm not going to be responsible for this. He could have gone in that moment. See, today's message is about these little moments. These little moments of decision where you could either respond in negativity, or you can say, Lord, how can I respond in graciousness? How can I respond in mercy? Remember, I was sharing with the kids that the same root word for joy and mercy is charis, which is the Greek word for it's the same word. And it really makes sense that when the Bible uses the word mercy and joy, it isn't the same thing. How can you experience joy if you haven't experienced mercy? It's hard to experience the joy of forgiveness and the new thing that God's been doing in your life. There isn't something that you have been forgiven for. We said last week that God's mercies are new every morning. And we have a choice to either accept that newness of what God is doing, or we can say, I'm going to ignore it. Because when we accept that newness, then we can receive the joy because we know that we have received mercy. Each and every day we are sinners in need of a Savior, and God gives us that mercy each and every day, and will empower us to live joyful lives, to make a difference in the world. And so, this is an example of the type of mosaics that you would find on the floors there. I mean, it was just, they had beautiful artwork on the floor. Just imagine stepping on really beautiful artwork. That's how wealthy Sepphoris was compared to the town that Mary was living in. But God approaches Mary and says, I have called you to be my servant, for you to go and do a work for me. Do not fear. Do not fear. I am calling you to bring about change. You see young Mary, and you realize the daunting task ahead of her. The daunting task ahead of her, but what she was doing, and I'm going to leave you with this word because I could go on and on about this thing, is that she was nesting. She began nesting and preparing to give birth to the Messiah. One of the themes of Christmas and Advent is that, in a way, we are all pregnant. You can say we're all pregnant with Jesus. We are all called to give birth to the Lord. We are all called on Christmas Day to be a part of that story where God is bringing a new thing into the world, new salvation, a new hope into the world. And so we need to prepare ourselves as Mary prepared her home and herself to be able to be the mother of this child who had a great work to do for the world. But it can be challenging, isn't it? I mean, you look at the ladies who, brought about the Me Too movement. As we said, it was a very challenging thing for them to do. It took courage for them to be able to do that. But sometimes we have to learn to be flexible. Sometimes we have to say, Lord, help me be flexible in my heart to the new things that you're doing. Because sometimes the world that we live in and the opportunities that seem before us seem so daunting that they seem almost insurmountable. But God says, in those moments, look at Mary. Mary could have lived with fear, and she says, I could be living in fear, but instead I choose to fear the Lord. I choose to focus on the Lord and open myself up to the change that I need in my heart to be able to prosper and to make a difference in any given situation. I was reminded of the story by Maya Angelou, the poet, and she shares this interesting story about her grandmother. Her grandmother was a poor woman who got a divorce with 2 kids. And the interesting thing was, she said, back in those days, divorce wasn't the thing. I mean, there were not a lot of people getting divorced, and if you were divorced, you were looked down upon. And so on top of being a single mom in a poor area of West Virginia, she was even further down because she was divorced. But she realized at that moment that the God who had presented her with an opportunity. And the opportunity was to bake beef pies for the men at the mill. So she would set up a little stand, a little table, and she would fry these beef pies, and she would sell them to these gentlemen. This was her way to survive. When there was no way, she said, Lord, I'm going to find a way. And so God made a way by herself selling these beehives. And then it grew and prospered. She developed relationships with both the white workers and the black workers. And then she saved enough to buy a general store. She actually ended up buying a store. You know, one of the things that Maya Angelou's grandmother taught Maya was that, you know, when these difficult times come where there seems like, in times of repression, there seems like there's no way out, you know, God is often showing you that there is a way out. You just need to be calm and look for the opportunities. Don't stay in the fear. As the angel said 3 times to Mary, fear not, fear not, fear not. Don't get paralyzed by the change that's coming. Be flexible. Be flexible in the Lord and see that there is opportunity everywhere. Life happens, folks. There are people being born, people getting married. There are, you know, people move into neighborhoods. People may move out, but people move in. Smile, folks. Everybody smile. Don't let the fear of change just scare you. This is a new year coming. Advent hope is all about receiving the joy and the mercy of the Lord and saying, what is new? Because sometimes we will go that new way and we will find, as we go together down that new road in 2018, the Lord is going to help us to prosper. Do not fear. Do not give up. You know, these words of encouragement are so important, aren't they? You know, there was a memorial service two Saturdays ago for Gerald Boykins, and the grandchildren came up, and they said, you know, there are times when I'm really struggling in life, and I'm just really afraid, but my grandfather would tell me at that moment, he'd say, it's okay. I know your parents are worried. I know that there's a lot of things to worry about, but it's okay. We're with you, and God is with you. That moment, pregnant moment, choosing not to be negative, choosing not to go down a dark road, choosing to bring to your family a positive word. You know, yesterday we're having a practice here, and there was a moment where we were having kind of, you know, I think we're all tired actually, and we're having practices for Love Pure Light, and there was some confusion going on about, you know, the length of time of the program, and originally we thought it would be an hour long, but, you know, we discovered it's probably going to be maybe 10 to 15 minutes longer. And it was a nowhere conversation. You ever have those nowhere going conversations because you're all tired? And so, but one of our elders said, you know what? It's Christmas. People will understand. Change the spirit on the road. Changed it. Everybody breathed, sigh of relief, big smile came on, and we moved on with our day. Woo! Power of a moment. Power of being positive, power of not going down the negative road that the world wants you to go down. Let the Lord just fill us with that joy this Christmas. Huh? All right, so my next point about bringing this joy, bringing our joyful best to the Lord, is all about these powerful moments of bringing joy and mercy to the world. There are people that need mercy out there. People who are struggling alone. Look around you and say, who's missing, even from our own community? They need mercy. They need to hear a voice that reminds them that don't be down. Don't be negative. God loves you. I care enough to give you a phone call this week before Christmas. I know I probably could have called all year long, but I'm not at least going to call you now. Give me one more try. You know, they may spew negativity and anger and whatever and fear, and that's okay because the Bible says that's kind of the human condition. So, once again, give the mercy. You've already done your mood settings. You're already in a good mood. So give from your abundance and give to those who need to hear the message of hope, message of forgiveness, message of joy. And in that process, you will find that the joy can now find room, because now there's room for that joy to be enveloped. There was a moment, an example of this, last year on YouTube that went viral. I think it was like 400,000 hits on YouTube. But it was the Yale Glee Club. They were on a train and going home, and they were kind of practicing their parts. then I'm going to show you this. I edited it down to 1 minute, so don't worry, it's not going to go on forever. And just watch what this conductor does. He takes advantage of that moment to bring the joy and bring his best self to that moment and creates a magical moment. I didn't use that illustration today. Okay, that one, can you just press the play button? I don't know why it's not just playing. Okay. Okay, so technical glitch. Okay, so it's just, okay, just back here. Right. Why is this not moving? Next. Okay, so imagine this. If you've ever been to the Northeast, the train conductors have a hat on, and they punch tickets when you're going somewhere. And he clicked, and so he bangs on one of the posts because the Yale Glee Club is practicing their song. Gets their attention, and he says, "Look, you've already sang that song. Let's sing the Carol of the Bells." And so then he begins getting them going. How does that song go? Sing silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Anyways, and so it fills the whole train with hope and joy. This is when I wish I had like 2 services and you would have caught this glitch. and then everyone just bursts out into applause in the train. And you know that this is a moment, just one of those moments where it just brought a normal, ordinary situation and brought a ton of hope to it. Each and every one of us is capable of being like Mary, carrying Christ into this world and bringing hope and joy and opportunity to help those who are in need of hearing that joyous message to the world. Join me in prayer. Dear gracious Lord, we give you thanks and praise for your love. We give you thanks and praise for all that you do for us. But Lord, we give you thanks most of all during this Advent season that you give us a reminder to bring our joyful best to every situation, no matter what station of life we find ourselves in, and no matter how ordinary a moment that we may be in. Lord, when we bring that joy and we bring that hope, Lord, you can bring reform and change into the world. We give you thanks and praise as we prepare for Christmas Eve. Amen.